Good morning from New York, and thank you for joining us on this Wednesday morning's LinkedIn Live. My name's Nikki, and I look after marketing communications for Insight Partners, and welcome to our Behind the Investment LinkedIn Live. Today, we're going to be talking about our most recent investment, which we announced yesterday, which was in Plume, the business that is transforming the way that we think about connected devices, smart homes, and Wi-Fi. So today, I'm going to be joined by Insight Partners Managing Director Ryan Hinkle, and also Plume CEO Faris. So thank you very much, Ryan and Faris, for joining me today as we talk about our recent investment and getting behind the investment in Plume.
Thanks, Nikki. Great to be here.
Wonderful to have you.
Wonderful, Nikki.
And Faris is actually joining us all the way from Switzerland, so this is truly a global life. So before we dive in, something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand is Insight invests in companies as early as Series A, and Faris, this was a Series E investment. So, you've really been building an incredible business since 2014. And before you were a successful CEO and founder of Plume, you went to Signa Partners, an early stage venture fund, and then back into the Plume CEO hot seat. So how did your career before Plume throw you back into entrepreneurship? And as you answer me, tell me about Plume and what you've built today.
All right, I will do my best.
Story as we get started.
All right, sounds good. Well, just like everything else in life, nothing is really planned, if you know what I mean. So I would say I feel, in the context of early stage venture capital, venture capital theoretically is a finance or financial asset class. But in practice, I realized after doing it for a while is that it actually is not. It's all about company building. It's all about entrepreneurship. It's all about sort of getting a feel for the opportunity, if you know what I mean. Because in early stage venture, we don't have a lot of data points. Usually, a couple of guys come over with twinkle in their eyes, fire in the belly to change the world, and a PowerPoint presentation. So you're sort of going into everything with belief. That is something that I really, really enjoyed, and I still enjoy in so many ways. But I found myself that in order to be a good early stage venture capitalist, I think you really need to stay connected with the entrepreneurs. You gotta feel the pain, if you know what I mean. So, and prior to becoming an early stage venture person, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. So it's been sort of going back and forth in a way. But I feel that it keeps your sort of coming back onto the CEO hot seat, if you may call it that way, keeps your skills sharper, I believe, in the context of, again, early stage venture capital, where there isn't usually a lot of data.
Yeah.
And then I have to admit, I sometimes you get frustrated. You see, young entrepreneurs, you just want to just roll your, sleeves and jump in and do it. But it's not as an investor, even at the early stages. You're an advisor. We're guiding these companies. So the desire to go in and just be, fix the problems that you're passionate about, is unsurmountable, if you will. So that's.
I'm sure Ryan can agree with that.
Yeah.
For sure. No, it's interesting. I mean, I'm not sure our paths to this moment could be more different, except for the fact, of course, that we're partners now. But my story begins with my grandmother. Interestingly, she started a business in 1969. So by the time, and obviously I was not born. So spoiler alert, I'm not 50. But the what I came to appreciate is that a woman entrepreneur in the 60s and 70s is not entirely normal, nor is it normal to be the child/grandson of an entrepreneur. Like, I got to live vicariously this entrepreneurial life. And long story short, there was an attraction I felt to Insight back in 2004, where I got to interact with entrepreneurs. And I couldn't explain it to my parents when I chose this over joining a big bulge bracket bank. Like, what are you doing? I never heard of Insight. And for me, I think it was visceral, this connection to the entrepreneur. And my thought was, I'll spend 2 years getting to know what good looks like in companies, having no idea what good looks like. And I don't know if I forgot to leave or if they forgot to tell me to, but 17 years later, this moment and this interaction and having these intersecting journeys meet at this moment in time for creating value. I was always in love with Insight's commitment to being a value-added partner and advocate for the companies first and foremost. And a lot of those themes resonated in, as we got to know each other, a lot of things were clicking yet again in why I love Insight and why I love getting to work with entrepreneurs like you, Fari.
I don't think my mum knows what venture capital is still, but as much as I try to tell her. But Fari, tell us how that experience kind of translated into Plume.
You bet. The only other thing I'll say on this topic of the early stage venture and so on before I answer that, Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
First, Ryan, I noted the comment about you weren't born in 1969 and you're not 50. I'm going to punish you for that one later in a board meeting or something. I'll have to find because I
Good
am.
deal. My birthday in 4 weeks. Just saying. Mark your calendar.
But the other thing that has happened to me, to be completely transparent, is I got a little afraid. As an early stage venture person, I realized that after a while, I wasn't really selling, if you know what I mean. We were just constantly just sitting, analyzing ideas and critiquing and giving advice and all of that. You're leaning back instead of leaning forward. And that's what I've learned at Plume as well. You're always selling something, whether it's the customers, the investors, partners. You're trying to infect people with your vision and ideas. And sometimes it's, particularly when you're creating something brand new, people don't get it. You just have to just keep repeating and trying to convince people. So that's part of it to me. Was, again, in order to be the best venture capitalist, I feel like I really have to remain a player. And we'll see what the future will bring, but that's kind of where we are. We all come into it from different dimensions, but I think this partnership is going to be wonderful as we sort of get each other, if you know what I mean.
Definitely. So yes, so Series E in a company called Plume that focuses on smart homes. And what's amazing to me is IoT connected home really in software and technology nomenclature has only been around since 2010, 2011, but it's just really skyrocketed to today. And I think for all the people that are listening, this is our Behind the Investment series on our most recent investment in Plume. Many of us don't even realize the connected nature of our home and the role that Wi-Fi and all the different service providers and communication service providers play in making that work seamlessly. So tell us, what does Plume do as a business and how has it evolved over the last 7 years?
Yeah, I mean, again, as I mentioned before, when we started the company, I have to admit let's say the plan or the vision wasn't as broad. I come from this telco cable world and really wanted to fix. I got frustrated with Wi-Fi and realized that somebody had to do something about the last 2 meters. In the past, we used to talk about the access networks, the last mile, as being the fundamental issue. So we got into it, just trying to solve this problem inside the home. Quickly realized that it wasn't really a hardware problem at the end of the day. It had to, because you're dealing with this wireless channel that is indeterministic medium, unlicensed spectrum in the case of Wi-Fi. So you really needed to solve this problem with a lot of compute and storage. And 5, 6 years ago, we were already there in terms of availability of cloud compute and storage, which really provided the opportunity for us to solve this Wi-Fi problem once and for all, because you have to respond to this constantly changing environment in a dynamic way and even predictive and preemptive way. So that sort of came later. So in solving this Wi-Fi problem from the cloud with a lot of compute, a lot of people said, look, that won't work. You can't act fast enough and so on. But, we proved that it's, certain policies can reside on the cloud, and things that need to happen fast can still happen at the device level. Anyway, in solving this problem, we think we've solved it better than anybody else. At least my team would feel that and say that. In solving this problem, though, we ended up building an entire platform on which new services that rely on Wi-Fi as the networking layer could be offered. And that is something the carriers, which we have chosen to be our key go-to-market, badly need. because their traditional bundle of voice, video, and internet is melted. It's gone. It's unbundled altogether. Their internet subscriptions are growing, but nobody wants phone lines. TV channels come over the top largely. But when you're selling only one main product to the customer, and the speeds and feeds are big now, the differentiation of that product has quickly become its price. A lot of people can give you 1 gigabit per second to your home. People choose it, whoever can give it to you sort of at the best price, if you will. That creates a commodity type of an environment, and all these carriers, in order to grow their top line as well as retain their customers, need to offer all sorts of new services to delight the consumers inside the home. And that's what Plume is all about. So we've created this platform over which these carriers can offer all sorts of services that we curate, but also be able to provide back-end tools and capabilities so they can support you properly and operate the network. Because the modern consumer is a bit more complicated and more sophisticated now. So a 360-degree experience and delight about the company or the service provider is not only about the front end service that you're getting. You also have to make sure that you can support, operate, manage, fix these things. So this platform also creates tremendous amount of back-end tools and capabilities for support and operations purposes. So that's what Plume's all about. We are really the friends in a way. As the competition in the home really heats up, the big techs coming into this, carriers are in a defensive position. We are really the main avenue for these guys to offer new services, retain their customers, and grow top line. Because I think the battleground is inside the home now, not necessarily just the pipes that are coming to the home.
Absolutely. For all of my old colleagues at NBN Co and National Broadband Network and Telstra, they will be nodding vehemently along with you. So Ryan, this is a relatively new space for Insight to invest in, probably because, as Faris said, they truly are the leader. When we make an investment, so let's go behind the investment, there is a ton of deep diving into the sector, diligence that goes on. Can you give us some insights into what you guys found in that process and what really stood out about Plume that led us to come into this Series E?
Yeah, for sure. Well, if there's one thing we got, it's insight, because that's what we call ourselves. Couldn't help myself, Nikki.
We use that too often.
I don't know. This just spoke to me. If the numbers 168.192.1.1 mean anything to you, I'll tell you something. The first time I heard those numbers, by the way, that's the network admin for most routers. The first time I came across that was setting up I lived with 8 people in a house in West Philly when I was at university, and I was the network guy, and I had to figure out how to make 168.192.1.1 work. And by the way, we couldn't afford cables. We got the free cables from the dorm, and I clipped them with electrician's tape and made 50-foot cables out of 5 10-foot cables and spiderweb the outside of the house. So literally, I was a network admin for this place, and the experience was painful. And interestingly, pre-Plume, it's not that different still. That you look in the back of your router and you have some crazy URL you have to get into to sign. And so the need of a double E degree, which I happen to have, to manage your home network is insane. And this last 2 meters concept that Faris talked about spoke to me, that from the provider's perspective, their job is done when the pipe hits your house. And from your perspective, you've got to have the experience on whatever device you're on. By the way, in front of me, I'm on Wi-Fi on this machine that you're seeing me on. I've got my Remarkable for taking notes. This phone is connected. This coffee cup is connected. And so as I look at my house, I probably have 80 connected devices. And so for us, the bet is that, as Faris talks about, the number of connected devices will go up. And that is absolutely unstoppable at this point. And I'll ask you this question. Have you ever tried to print something and it doesn't work?
Story of my life. But now I know you're tech support. I'm coming straight to you.
No. I gave that job up a long time ago. But I suspect your solution is usually rebooting both devices or something like that.
World restart.
You yank the plug, you plug it back in. Well, if only there was a way to do that digitally. And I'm simplifying, but the whole logic layer that Faris talks about is to create software intelligence so that you don't have to run around your house and figure out which of the 100 devices is the culprit for gumming up a smooth operation on your system. And so the more we dug at the problem set, and we had real life experiences of what this problem set is, and then we explored possible solutions. We absolutely agree with Faris' team and Faris' assertion that this is by far the best way to solve that problem. And they're not working with little customers. They have major communications carriers that also agree this is the best way to do it. And I think in explaining to my colleagues internally, I said, to do what they've done so far is virtually impossible. The journey from here is exciting. And that they got this far leaves me with an enormous amount of enthusiasm for the potential of really changing the experience of how we interact with our devices. And so it was a kind of a triangulation of personal experience, understanding the problem set, and also appreciating degree of difficulty to even get this far. And that moat they've created should deepen and widen every minute they spend improving the innovation of the product. So it was a kind of a story of love at first sight in some sense, because I never could understand why they made it so difficult in the hardware devices for what is supposed to be a consumer experience. And it just made a lot of sense to us.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. And we're going to get into sort of your relationship and selling into communication service providers, and also talk a little bit more about that investment in innovation that's to come. But we had a question from the audience, the joys of live, which is super exciting. I'd be grateful to learn more about how Plume chose their VC investors. Was there a set of predefined, and you've clearly done this a lot from both sides of the fence, but was there a set of predefined criteria that you looked for in your VC partner at this stage that other founders could learn from?
The answer is no, it wasn't really a predefined criteria, but we sort of, our intent was clear. Obviously, beyond the money is obviously important, but we are constantly learning. So Plume is on a path. We, given our scale, momentum, financial performance, and so on, we could be a public company in the next couple of years. I'm not saying that's the plan. Going public is essentially access to more capital, right? And you provide some liquidity. The market dynamics are different now, but we wanted to surround ourselves with people with pattern recognition, people who understood the stage of the company, not necessarily the subject matter expertise. I think our team really knows what we're doing, but we really needed true partners who could help us get to that next level, potentially as a public company. There's a lot of things you have to worry about, from executive team to governance to the board structures, and also you guys are we wanted investors who really had their fingers at the pulse on what the financial markets, what the public markets are looking for, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that was really, we obviously needed to raise a certain amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, we wanted people who would be willing to, get on the boat and row with us rather than just sitting there. And secondly, and thirdly, I would say, I'm kind of drawing a little bit from my, venture experience as well, is you also want a group of people who can help you, but also respect that the management team is ultimately responsible for running the company. I don't want Ryan or Insight to run Plume. That wasn't the intent. So I mean, to be completely transparent, because I've also been in a lot of boardrooms as an entrepreneur, as an investor, and so on, and it's just frustrating as hell when a bunch of investors just throw prescribed solutions, if you want, to certain problems. So you're looking for advice, you're looking for a dialogue, you're looking for people who can help you, cover your blind spots. We all have blind spots.
Yeah.
So that was really, and Ryan, the Insight team, and everybody that we engaged with throughout. I mean, you guys were just very, very impressive. And now that we're in it together, I mean, the engagement has already started. So
Definitely.
that's what I would advise on, entrepreneurs, if people are kind of saying, what is it? It's not, only about the money. but also, you want, I feel like I'm the jockey who's riding this horse, obviously. So, presumably Ryan invested in us because he trusts our judgment.
Yeah.
Obviously, he believes in the vision. He sees the problem, but most importantly, I think you're trusting the judgment of the management team.
Definitely.
So that's kind of that's a very key thing for me personally.
Yeah.
And this is more of an issue, I guess, in the early stage companies, but across the board, because when people also write very large checks, sometimes it can feel
Expectations.
so
Yeah. Ryan, I'd love
that's what I can say. We didn't have a checkbox though, like it wasn't, doing this math analysis and probabilities of this and that.
there is a lot of
It's
gut.
also feel. Let's
Yeah.
feel. Let's feel.
Because I think, Ryan, we see it a lot, and when we speak to entrepreneurs, there is a lot of money out there, and money in many ways is becoming a commodity. And so, when we recognize that it can take an army to help amazing entrepreneurs and their teams build a business, can you give us a little bit more, and Faris, I thank you for the kind words on Insight, and Ryan is incredible, so I'm not surprised. But Ryan, can you give us a little bit more insight into that partnership side of things? Like, you're the one that's going to be in that boat with Faris. How does Insight support with more than capital?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of, the word trust really is the word that keeps coming into my head as I listen to what Faris was looking for and ultimately what we want in relationships. And as you described the journey of the early stage, like there's this moment, and you've heard me say this before, Nikki, where the question is no longer, can this thing be a thing? Like the hallmark of startup is, can this thing be a thing? And pretty clear that Faris proven that this can be an absolutely massive thing. And that's the scale up phase in my vernacular. It's just how big can this thing be? It's about continuing to innovate on product and continuing to dramatically scale go-to-market energies to build an even bigger and better revenue stream so you can support bigger and better customer outcomes, which create, of course, bigger and better employee outcomes. And all of this virtuous cycle is reinforced. And where we specialize is precisely in that scale-up phase where we want exactly what Faris just described. Like, I don't want to touch operations. If I put my hands on the steering wheel, I'm crashing the car. But I can look ahead and note potholes and use pattern recognition. I love that vernacular, Faris. The 400 examples we can draw from in scale-up stage companies to learn the best of, learn the worst of, advise and direct. And the beauty of the Insight approach is that I don't do this alone in the boardroom. Faris referenced the team. I lost count on that kickoff call. I think we had 10 Insight people on the call, spanning one of my partners, Anika Agarwal, one of my principal colleagues in the on-site team, Byron Lichtenstein, and a whole bunch of other people. And the on-site team is
Tell us about on-site for people who don't know what on-site is.
The on-site team is our answer to the question, what do you provide besides capital? And it's organized to basically mirror a software company where there's finance expertise, sales expertise, marketing expertise, tech expertise, product expertise, hiring expertise, et cetera. And the idea is I don't know all of the discrete pain points across all of those pieces, but they do. And when I sit in a boardroom or listen to challenges Faris faces, my job is to think of connecting dots and see if we can be helpful. And I think more important than being helpful, acknowledge when we can't be. And Faris, this is where it really spoke to me on your commentary. Like, you don't want us getting in the way where we can't be helpful. That is central to Insight philosophy. Help where you can, stay the heck out of the way where you can't. And so much of this comes back to trust. I think there's an element of this dynamic that Faris did not mention that helped us develop trust via transitivity. I'll explain. There's a person who's a service provider that both of us have used. He knows who he is. I will protect the innocent, but had a great relationship with me, had a great relationship with Faris, has seen both of us in boardroom settings. And to me, it's a good lesson in how you act in a boardroom echoes well beyond the perimeter of that room. That this person connected us as, I know you, I know what you're about. I know him, I know what he's about. I think you two would really get along. I think you two see eye to eye. And in this COVID-affected, can't really sit eye to eye world, that chemistry trust development is arguably the hardest part in any transaction, especially hard when you're not physically together. And I think the common thread where we were able to do mutual referencing through one person in this case really helps reinforce the trust model that we are so committed to creating at the pitching a deal phase all the way through whatever outcome we're aiming for. And so I really wanted to lean into that trust development that I think is central to how we got to be lucky enough to sit at this table with Fari. And in full disclosure, it was what drew me to Fari's vision and by extension his whole team.
Definitely. And so I'm going to extend that conversation on trust, but I'm going to take that into the communication service providers because, Fari, Plume has done an exceptional job. It sounds like there's someone also, on your board or an advisor in that ISP role. Is it 170 communication service providers that you work with currently, or has that number grown?
It's growing every day. Literally, it's growing every day. We passed 100. We passed 170 mark a little while ago. In December, when we announced that we had reached 20 million active households on the Plume platform, we had about 150 customers. That's the end of 2020. Just to give you a sense, at the beginning of 2020, we had about 50. So we added about 100 customers. So then in the last couple of months, we added 20 something. So it's, the momentum is definitely there. There's no question that the service providers are appreciating this. So it really, really matters now. But the key point also, Ryan appreciated this, and Insight team in general. That's 150 or 170 out of about 15,000.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we've proven that there's a healthy business to be built here, and we're literally just scratching the surface. That doesn't even include all the other market segments, adjacent areas that we will be able to expand into, leveraging what we have done as kind of an unfair advantage. If we didn't do anything significantly different than what we do today, but do more of it, it's a massive company. I think it's a massive opportunity where we're just scratching the surface.
And how are you building those relationships? For many people that are listening, they're either working at communication service provider companies or they are entrepreneurs themselves. And, building those relationships and achieving what you've done to date and developing that trust with that network, how are you selling into these telcos? Is there any secret sauce into Plume's strategy that has allowed you to achieve such exceptional growth to date?
The customer segment in communication service providers in general, I'm going to generalize, is actually quite difficult to penetrate into, particularly the larger ones. And let me try to explain why that is. At least it's my perception. Remember, what we call ISPs today, largely people refer to them as internet service providers. Well, they're all internet service providers now, but 20 years ago, they weren't. There was your cable company who sold you TV channels, right? There was a phone company, there's all the Bell companies, and AT&T effectively was a phone company. But then over the last, 20 years or so, right, they all became internet service providers. That became the thing. But in the old days, if you wanted to make phone calls, there was only one company you could go to. If you wanted to watch TV, there was one company. So the DNA of a lot of these kind of companies come from this monopolistic view. It's kind of the old style, right? That is changing. The leading operators have realized that you got to be a little faster on your feet. You don't take your customers for granted. In many cases, their customers were loyal to them because they had to be, if you know what I mean. There wasn't really
no other option. Yeah.
Right. So that's changing. And I think we've also, myself and my co-founders and so on, we come from this world. So there were some established relationships. But you're ultimately approaching this set of customers, this channel, let's say, at the right time, at the right set of solutions. And today, the consumer is looking for these personalized experiences. They are looking for cross-device experiences. Ryan talked about his connected coffee mug and all that kind of stuff. Connected devices, I bet you Ryan is the IT guy in the home, right? And if he wants something to talk to somebody else, he's having to program things. And I think with the new world of data, cloud, AI, these kind of tools we have available to us, his home should be programming to his behavior and patterns instead of him worrying about, which device should talk. In the old days, when you only had one or two devices, the IT guy could type in the 192 dot whatever and make a few things happen. In the new world with 8, 10, 12, 50, 80 devices, that's not going to happen. And our secret weapon here is cloud compute and storage, if you know what I mean. So anyway, I know it's a long-winded answer, but when we go to these CSPs, we do not sell them Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Right. We do not sell them coverage solutions. Yes, it is something that they're resonating with right now. But the reason these 170 service providers, CSPs, have chosen to work with Plume is not because we're the cheapest solution, we're a hardware-driven thing. It's because they see that their world is changing in a big way as their bundles are unbundling. They're looking at Plume as this platform over which they will be able to continue to grow and retain their customers. So that's, we talk a lot about Wi-Fi. 5 years ago, if you were roaming around the corridors at Plume, Wi-Fi was spoken every millisecond, right? And today, still Wi-Fi is spoken a lot. But I think 5 years from now, the word Wi-Fi is not going to be spoken much. It's just the foundational layer. So, long way of saying it's one at a time. Every customer matters, and we're trying to resonate with them, resonate with their fears, right? A lot of times. So we're all sort of, humans are driven by fear or greed. And in the case of Plume, we're resonating with both the fear and the greed side. Fear in terms of you got to retain your customers. Big tech is coming. Google's, Amazon's of the world are going to try to come and land through the smart speaker and try to marginalize you into being dumb pipes. That's where we're resonating with these operators from the fear perspective. But then we also resonate with their greed side by saying, by the way, you can beat them because you have an unfair advantage. They have the router. They have visibility to all the devices. That's their unfair advantage versus an Amazon coming to your home over the top. But secondly, we say, look, you're not only going to keep your customers, but there's plenty of revenue opportunity because the modern consumer is looking for personalized cross-device experiences that you are in the best position to provide. Yeah. So that, I think, as approaching we're all humans, both from the kind of the fear and greed side, has proven, and like I said, it's well beyond Wi-Fi. Although we all see it. So that's also, I'll say one last thing. It's wonderful for us because it's a wonderful catalyst that opens the conversation in many cases, but then people see the bigger picture. We are always, I can almost guarantee this, we're probably always the most expensive solution.
Right.
Not the cheapest. And in fact, my sales team knows that if we're being selected because we're the cheapest, we're probably not going to have a sticky customer.
Yeah.
And Ryan and the team know what our logo churn effectively has been 0. So that's how we're approaching them. It's tough, but I think once you earn credibility, you earn trust in the ecosystem, and then the positive spiral starts. And in the case of Plume, we're there. It started.
Awesome. And
sorry, I think a lot of this, you asked us earlier, what do we love about the business? So I think there's two challenges they face in knocking down a new customer. One is getting to the right decision maker, like just navigating your way to even be allowed to have the conversation is non-trivial, as these organizations are very, very large, and getting in the door. The better your brand and reputation is, the easier that becomes. And that's what I mean when I say it was virtually impossible to get this far. It should be marginally a little bit easier as the reputation continues to precede them. But getting in the door is a big one. And then 2, what Faris just described is they're providing enhanced revenue and reduced costs at the same time to their customers. That's like almost too good to be true. And so convincing them, no, really, like this is the ROI demonstration that we can deliver for you, and this is the effect that it has. the more experiences they have and the proof points they have, even that message can resonate more powerfully. And that was what attracted me in the dynamic of each success should beget a little bit more success. And this snowball will continue to gather momentum rolling down the mountain.
And I'm going to come back to both of you on kind of the what's next, but we had another question from the audience. I love live. Congrats, Fari. As an early stage startup on a niche sector market, what could have been done, the two things that could have been done different to get your VC closed faster? So that's kind of two questions is, was it fast? Did you want it to go faster? Or, what are some of the gotchas that other entrepreneurs should be thinking about in the fundraising process?
I guess it was relatively fast. And we're also thankful that Ryan and team and other people we were talking to were kind of, paying attention and moving fast. Depends on the stage, let's say. At our stage, right? One of the reasons I believe the financing went fairly fast is because we sort of we knew that investors were going to be very interested in a financial model. That at this stage, that financial model of what's worked, why it worked, and why is it going to explode from here is what I believe this stage of invest. I mean, Ryan he's a lot more qualified to invest to answer that. But we believe that the financial model and all the backup data, everything else, our contracts and so on. So we were sort of fairly familiar, and so we got ready, if you know what I mean. So we were ready to go into it. In the earlier, if the question was around earlier stage startups, again, depends on the kind of the market dynamics, the competitive situation. I think in my experience, to go fast, I think you want to find the right entry point into these early stage venture funds. It's in my, again, and I'm not saying anything, I'm only kind of expressing, we're all sort of victims of our own experiences. And in my case, you got to go into, your connection needs to come from a trusted source. Deal sourcing in the early stage startups is probably the most critical thing that data probably shows about their level of sort of returns and success. So if you want to move fast, I think to me, that's just kind of your entry point is going to be very, very important.
Ryan, I'd love to hear from you on that as well, because Insight, if anyone's listening, we do Series A. If you're passing that product market fit phase and you're truly ready to scale up, building relationships with the right investors early on can definitely be helpful. But Ryan, from your perspective, the deal dynamics from an investor's side and on fast or slow and how they come to be, what are some of your insights there?
Yeah, well, one thing that was particularly unique in this challenge, I mean, Fari, I don't think any legal issues got to us. Very, very few legal issues got to us. And so there's getting to a term sheet, which is a phase, and then there's from term sheet to close. And one of the things I was most proud of in this interaction is Fari said, look, I'm going to hold you accountable to the timeline that you're committing to in this term sheet. I said, don't worry, Fari, I'm going to hold my service providers accountable to delivering it. And we hit the day on the nose, I think I'm pretty sure it was New Year's Eve when we shook hands on the structure of the term sheet on a very, very tight timeline. And so I think the communication on what is expected mutually. Now, the VC is the one delivering commitments in terms of time in this setting, but Fari referenced being able to deliver the materials for the due diligence exercises quickly. They were prepared and very ready to embark on all of that. So it really takes commitment to be ready for it as the company, and commitment on the investor side to move extremely quickly. I think we hit all of it in great synchronization in this particular transaction. And I wish I could replicate that every single time, that the two sets of lawyers are seeing eye to eye on speed being more important than being right or wrong on some archaic little issue, that the due diligence questions, we know when to say, okay, we're done. And Fari can anticipate reasonably well the kinds of things we would need. That's not always easy to line up on both sides, but the communication is key. But I think to push on your point a bit in the Series A, I'm sure many of the entrepreneurs listening here are getting lots and lots of phone calls from lots and lots of people across the investor ecosystem. This is not an unusual event. We have a team of over 40 people that spend a lot of time calling and reaching out to companies. And my advice to speed up anybody's raising money ambitions is talk to them. Don't be focused on the titles of the people you're calling. Chances are those people are the smartest ones at their firms on the space they're calling into. And Fari talks about hooks into firms, understanding the chemistry of that particular firm, and then finding a path into developing a relationship with a partner at that firm. That can be done at a very early stage relative to when you're actually going to raise money. And with this model, with all of us out there trying to preach the gospels according to our respective investment philosophies, you get a chance to hear directly from us. I say us, I mean any firm that has this type of model, that chances are we're finding you, and we're finding you relatively early in your lives, so you can build that relationship very quickly.
And I'm going to stay with you, Ryan, and then end, Fari, with you on, so I'll give you some prep time on what's next for Plume and that focus on innovation, which was, highlighted as what you'll be planning to do with your Series E investment. But Ryan, just quickly on that, you mentioned, philosophies of different firms, and we actually had a question which I'm going to merge into my next question, is what is Insight Partners doing now that differentiates themselves from other firms? So I do want you to explain Insight's philosophy and our point of differentiation, but I want you to tie it into the Plume story, because I do think something a lot of people don't understand, the diligence work that we did, which you talked about previously, to get us to the point of investment, we actually flip that and turn that into an activation and support plan so that we can lean in and help the Plume team where they need it and where we can provide support. But so Ryan, the impossible question, tell us our point of differentiation and special sauce and relate it to Plume and what we're doing next.
Nothing like the softballs. Thanks, Nikki. I mean, the answer I'm going to start with is the same answer I was trained on back in 2003 when I joined as a summer analyst. And the story back then was there are three things that differentiate Insight. One, all we do is software. Two, we have a large group of people, I was one of them, that reaches out to companies. We're not shy. We will find you, and we want to build relationships with you over a long period of time. And three, we have Insight OnSite, which is committed entirely to helping you in that journey of scaling up, although we didn't use that vernacular at the time. And that's true today with another, back then we had raised a cumulative $1.25 billion. Today, we're sitting at something like $30 billion. So I'm trying to do the math in my head quickly, 25 times bigger. And so those three things are still massive differentiators, but the scale that we do it at now is untouchably large. And the commitment we have to either having an answer to some of your pain points or building capabilities in-house to have them has never been stronger. You referenced the Series A. I remember a time when we were doing 10, 12 deals a year. We're doing 10, 12 deals a quarter. I think on New Year's Eve, that day we shook hands, Fari, I think we had 8 financings that day. It was a record. Like so many things happening to close out the year. So we're able to maintain the fidelity of our commitment to creating outcomes and partnering to create outcomes at increasing scale with resources that are ever growing. And I often like to talk about it as the benefits of a VC firm are a commitment to growth, but they can run out of capital if it's a $300 million fund. The benefits of a PE firm are unimaginable resources, but they may not always be focused on growth. And what I love about Insight is we kind of take the best of both, unimaginable resource with the highest commitment to growth. And doing that entirely in software is something we have not seen at the scale that we do it. Now, our commitment is to maintain that personal connection and ability to drive the outcomes in that boardroom in precisely the ways Fari wanted and asked for. And so when you combine all of that, it's an important piece. Now, to get specific on your question, the due diligence phase, we check sales, we check marketing, we check product, we check technology, we check accounting, we check all of the obvious areas of the business. And one of the first things we did post-close is scheduled what we call kind of a kickoff meeting, where basically we read out our observations and the areas that if it were up to us entirely, these are things we would want to be helpful to you with. And we hand then a red marker and a green marker, figuratively speaking, to Fari and say, cross out the ones you disagree with in red, circle the ones in green that you want. And is there anything else that you're really focused on? And so you use the due diligence period to get smart enough to have a perspective on where we can be helpful. And then you ask permission, like literally ask permission of the teams. May we help you in these areas? This is what we see. And when that handshake works, where you have an agreement of, I have a knowledge source here, I have a need here, and it's bought in on all sides, the model is a beautiful thing. If we try instead to dictate, like we know what we're doing better than you do, that will be organ rejection and it will not work. So much of the insight machinery is built to facilitate that trust and to know that it's a safe place to raise your hand with a challenge, that our job is to see if we can help solve it. And like I said earlier, if we can't, say so. And that the intensity of due diligence feeding into the early insight on-site collaboration is one of the most special elements of how we do what we do. And I mean, Fari, I'd be curious how you reacted to that session. We just did it, was it last week or a week and a half ago, where he got to see it live. So curious if you found that helpful.
It was awesome, not just helpful, and that now, I mean, as we speak this week, many teams we've kind of spread out into these teams, and there are lots of meetings. I know that even today there are various sessions, but that very helpful and awesome. But also, people put their money where their mouth is, if you will, and in this case, remember, Ryan and Insight team, we are counting on you now, right? That's part of the reason. So if you don't deliver what you promised beyond the money, thank you very much for the money. The check cleared. The check cleared. But if you don't deliver what you promised, not only would we be disappointed, but you would hurt the company, if you know what I mean. So please don't take that too literally, but that's what we listened. Right, and part of the reason we partnered is because of our strong belief that you're going to be rowing the boat with us. So it's in this scenario, people, firms like Insight who are offering this tremendous capability, and your track record and numbers and returns, etc., speak for themselves that it's working. But it's sort of a proof point that it's delivering, because you're significant investors, and as people believe this, if it doesn't deliver, it has a negative effect, not just a neutral effect, if you know what I mean. So, and I think the proof is sort of in the pudding now. It's proven.
Challenge accepted.
So,
Definitely.
Everybody, you heard it here first.
let's get moving. Yeah.
If I know the Insight way, it'll be everyone in that boat rowing in the same direction. So Fari, I do want to end, because this has been an incredible conversation, and I do want to give you your days back. But in your press release around the Series Z, you really focused on that Plume will be focused on innovation. What does that mean, and what is the future growth of Plume looking like, and what are we expecting to see great things out of the company?
Well, I mean, we're at this critical mass. So there is now, at the early stages, you talked about product market fit and so on. Are people buying this and so on? So I think check. We're at this critical mass, and Ryan and Insight team, you guys know growth, right? Growth is very important.
Now blood.
And the growth comes into two main, if I may generalize, there are two dimensions. You grow by closing more customers and penetrating the market deeper and so on. The second part of the growth dimension is you continue to innovate and sell new products, both to existing and new customers, right? Those are the two growth dimensions. So that's exactly what we're pushing on. We're the one growth dimension, the horizontal one, if you will, would be, okay, let's just go get more customers. That's sales and marketing spend. So we're leaning in a lot into sales and marketing. We've actually been quite efficient given our channel strategy and partnership leverage and so on. And then when you look at all sorts of metrics and KPIs and stuff the SaaS industry loves to use, numbers say you should be leaning in even more, because you're almost too efficient in sales efficiency figures, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just one way of making yourself feel good, that all the money that you're planning to spend is, relative to cohorts and all of that, makes sense. And then the R&D expense. The company also is we're a high gross margin business that gives us very significant amount of operating leverage. So, which means I have the luxury of leaning in heavily into R&D and sales and marketing, and then combine that with a cash position, on the balance sheet. I think that really set the stage for us. It's just a wonderful catalyst, for 2021 and beyond, for us to just keep growing. The only other thing I'll say is I'm not one of those CEOs that's going to say we're going to grow at any cost, right? I don't take, we're also a very frugal company. We don't take money for granted. But we're a software business. We're not a capital intensive business. We don't have to build networks. We don't have to build factories. We don't have to commit, millions or lots of money to fabs, et cetera, which means, by slowing down growth, if something were to go wrong, we can always pull back on growth and make money. So our, those two lines, if you will, your gross margin and your OpEx, we run it fairly, closely. So that, as an investor, as Ryan and team are looking at this, it's kind of like, we never know. It's a very, while it's time to be aggressive, but it's lots of, uncertainty in our world these days. So if something were to go wrong, I think we could, we could cross lines, and with a strong balance sheet, everything would be, okay. I think we can definitely, thrive.
I think thriving is what it's at. Ryan, any last words?
Yeah, Nikki, I mean, I'm not a marketer, I'm not allowed to touch that steering wheel either. But as I zoom out to the biggest vision, there's two names that come to mind that I think if you kind of merged the spirits of these two brands, you have what I see as potential for Plume. So Nest is a name we know of devices that are beloved in homes that make things happen for you in a positive way. And Waze is a product we use to help us get where we're going. Well, imagine a device that helps your Wi-Fi experience get to where it needs to be going without running into the wrong blocked intersections or other challenges. And my fullest vision for Plume is that people think of that 5-letter word Plume in the same spirit they think of the beloved Nest/Waze ecosystems. That is what I see as the opportunity ahead. And the capital is just a lubricant to facilitate getting there. It's the execution, though, of Faris and his team that will help continue to take that 20 million homes, hopefully add a zero to it and beyond, and really create the opportunity for the world to feel the benefit of this particular product set in this particular moment of need. So I'm excited. I absolutely think it's possible. It's a super hard task to build that type of ubiquity in a brand, but the potential is here, and I'm really excited to watch what happens unfold.
As am I, Faris. Ryan, I think your partnership will be dynamic, and very excited to see what's to come. And for everyone who listened in for nearly the full hour, thank you for joining us on Behind the Investment on Insight's latest investment in Plume. Thank you, Faris and Ryan.
Bye-bye. Thank you,
Thanks,
Nikki.
everyone.